Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. Tonight I wanted to talk about uh, sort of an answer to a question that I get fairly often when somebody asks me what my favorite anime is. And I always think that's like kind of a complicated thing because it's sort of like um, I always have this like mental tug of war of like what is my personal favorite anime versus what I think is quality wise the best anime, and I kind of think that those are sort of two different things. But I think forever, the easy part of that answer for me is the like my favorite anime personally, the one that means the most to me as an anime fan, the one that I don't think I would be an anime fan without, and that's Inuyasha. And I've talked about this show a lot before on this channel and in podcasts and live chats and whatever, what have you. I've had done a whole video on Sango from the show, my favorite female character of all time. And I'm doing weekly episode reviews of its sequel, Yashahime, which is currently airing in winter or fall, I guess, of 2020. So if you haven't checked those out or haven't checked out the sequel to Inuyasha, please check that out. And if you like what I'm doing here, by the way, please consider hitting that subscribe button. The channel's been growing a decent amount lately, and I'm super, super grateful for that. And yeah, like button, whatever, share this video, whatever you need to do. Leave a comment down below on your thoughts on Inuyasha. Did you like it? Did you hate it? I want to know your opinion. But I came up with sort of like my five-ish reasons as to why I like the show so much generally, and I tried to avoid too many like spoilers with this because I kind of want somebody maybe that hasn't really heard of it or seen anything about it at all, maybe they know nothing, as to why I'm so attached to it like personally. And I don't know if I can really like recruit anybody to watch it, but if I could even do that with like one person, that would be interesting. So I got going with like number five, and I couldn't really think of like a specific like image for this one, but the setting. I really like the setting of Inuyasha. It is definitely my cup of tea in terms of like anime settings. It is so like different than like the world that I live in that it is truly a cool fantasy setting. It's like feudal Japan. I don't know specifically like what historical time frame off the top of my head what it's supposed to be. I believe it's supposed to be in some actual like between some like shogunate or something in Japan, some sort of era. If you do know that, which some people definitely do, let me know down below. But feudal Japan is like what I like to call it. A very, I think, interesting setting. Something not, solely for the purposes of this anime. There's probably a whole bunch of other anime that take place there, but this was the first one that I really watched during that time period, and I like how it sort of like grounds like certain possibilities to an extent. Yes, I know this is a show about like demons and magic weapons and crazy abilities and stuff like that. But weaponry is pretty like vast at this time, but somewhat limited. You don't have people with like guns and bombs like walking around, but you do have people with like maybe like miniature like poison smoke grenades or different sort of like chains and bladed weapons. There's swords. There's kusarigama. Like there's long, short swords, spears. You got people that just are better at fighting like hand to hand if they have like demonic powers or something like that. And it's travel actually like means something here. This is kind of something that I also like in a series like Naruto, where yeah, it's like it's more convenient for the characters to travel in a quick manner via a train or some other means of transport. But when they have to like walk somewhere, another one is like Samurai Champloo. Like the time period creates the way that you creates pushes the way that you travel, and the way that you travel enhances the journey, in my opinion. And because they're kind of walking around and flying around in some instances on a flying demon that happens to work with them, it's still somewhat limited. Like, they're not like getting from A to B in a super fast manner. And I kind of like that. It kind of makes the show a little bit more of a nicer, slow burn, in my opinion. And I do like with the time period that it's in. Like, the world is pretty open. You have like these settlements of humanity that are constantly plagued by demons and stuff like that. It seems like a very dangerous place to live. By the way, this is not like the Pokemon world. This is not somewhere where I would necessarily want to live. I just think it's a cool setting for a story. It does seem very dangerous and chaotic. I do like that. There is like very little times where like you feel like super peaceful. Like, I feel really bad for a lot of the human villagers in this show because a lot of them get like attacked and slaughtered and stuff like that until Inuyasha's friends can save the day. Yeah, I like the setting a whole lot. It might not be the most unique thing in the world. It might not be the most historically accurate thing in the world all of the time, but I do think some time and effort went into sort of specific like references to like older Japanese beliefs and stuff like that. And I'm certainly no expert in that. There are other channels that you could check out too that will go more in depth about that, I'm sure. But yeah, I like the setting a whole lot. The next thing that I wanted to mention is that the story actually has like a pretty interesting goal, in my opinion. And this is something that like I know people sort of critique about the show because it is very, very long. If you wanted to watch all of Inuyasha, by the way, it is like 193 episodes, I believe, counting Final Act. I believe I have that count right. It's a pretty long journey. Obviously nothing compared to something like One Piece or anything, but compared to like modern seasonal anime, the idea of watching 193 episodes probably seems quite daunting, and I get that. But I do like how we have this goal of obtaining the Shikon Jewel shards, and stopping evil people from obtaining them. I like how there isn't like a set number of them because the shard did break and shatter into a whole bunch of pieces. So it's a matter of finding these pieces and trying to get the jewel back together. And so you kind of have this interestingly, I think, written setup where you know you don't know that you're almost at the end until you have like a majority of the pieces of the jewel, and they could be scattered in various different places. They could be obtained by different people. Different people could have different quantities of the shards, which enhance power and do all these other crazy things. And I like that. I like how it's not like, oh, we have to just defeat these 4 people and then it's all over. It's we're seeking out this like seemingly endless amount of shards at times, and it's a lot more about the people and forces that you encounter along the way, and developing relationships with your comrades and stuff like that, and meeting interesting people on that journey. And I like that a lot. I do. I can see how people might get annoyed with that, but you know, it's truly a show where it's more so about the journey than the destination, I suppose. Yeah, I like the idea of getting to the Shikon Jewel, getting back the Shikon Jewel. I like that a whole lot. Let's see. Oh, it has an awesome blend of action, humor, and romance, and I think that this is pretty interesting. I think this is, it's not your atypical like shonen series. In fact, it's more shoujo-esque because a lot of the perspective is from the teenage female lead Kagome, and there is a lot of like. I think it's kind of underrated about like the action in the series because there is some like brutal shit that happens in Inuyasha. Like there's scenes where like demons like skin like falls off and stuff like that, and they're like massacring these villagers and stuff like that, and killing them and using their bodies as puppets on strings. It's definitely not like a kiddie show at all, and it's not like Devilman levels of gore we're talking about here, but it's not afraid to be gory at sometimes. I remember early on there's this scene where like a crow demon thing like literally ate out a dude's heart and started controlling his body. And I remember seeing that when I was younger, and I was like, damn, that's pretty savage. Okay. But at the same time, you have this interesting sort of like romance triangle with Kagome and Inuyasha, and Inuyasha's former love Kikio, and you get the interesting developing relationship between Moroku and Sango. You got the lecherous monk Moroku. Like Moroku being a lecherous monk is pretty funny. We'll get into that sort of in a moment. And you just have these interesting like bonds between the characters that you definitely ship certain characters in the show. And while it might not all go like perfectly aligned to your liking, I think that the show is fairly well written to the extent that it does develop the relationships that it sort of like laid groundwork for early on. And I think that it's pretty commendable for a show that long to sort of like keep up doing that and not really have too many, I think, like disappointments in terms of like building character relationships and stuff like that. Unless you were somebody that like completely shipped characters that didn't end up together. If you're one of those people, I'm sorry, but yeah. And so it's got its action, it's got its romance. I think it balances that really, really well. And humor, like I said, you got a lecherous monk literally grabbing girls' asses and stuff all the time. The whole sit boy meme, whenever Kagome says sit boy, I think it's beads of subjugation they're called, make Inuyasha literally slam to the ground like a pet dog, I guess. I'm not advocating anybody slam their dog down, but he literally has to go down to the ground. And it's funny, and she does that a whole lot. There's a whole bunch of compilations of that on YouTube you could check out too. But it has its humor, it has its funny moments, it has its serious moments, it has its sad moments, has its cozy moments, and for all of that, I think that it's a really heartwarming experience. And something that keeps your attention because different episodes will have like a moment of like each one of these different like types of moments, if that makes sense. Like you'll have parts of an episode where you feel like you almost might cry or something like that, and then it's like, oh, I want to see a nice romantic scene between these two characters or something like that. Is this relationship developing? And I like that a lot. I think it's a really cool aspect of the series. Number two, this is probably like one of the bigger ones. My last reason is kind of a meme, but number two, the characters, even side characters, in this series, like are even if they're only mentioned like once or twice in the whole show, they'll have like this really interesting episode about them that really ties into the rest of the events that are going on and ties to our main cast here. Two that really like stand out to me are Shiori and Jinenji. Both of these characters kind of like got like I think like one or two episodes to them like a piece, but are particular episodes that I love about the show and really resonated with me back at the time. And every time I rewatch the series, I sort of harken back to like those moments where like I remember like the like Jinenji's like story arc like kind of almost like made me cry because I kind of felt like really bad for the guy, and Shiori's was very very similar. But yeah, I like when you're able to have even like side characters like that are like almost as strong as your main cast. I think that that's pretty impressive. Of course, as I mentioned like Kikio. Kikio is somebody that I really did not like when I first watched the series, and every time I watch it, I like her more and more. Uh, and yeah, she's got a lot to her. I used to really not like having her around all that much, but I think it adds like a whole level of like dynamic to the show that she is around. Um, and of course, you got Sashomaru. You got this at first seeming like he was going to be like an antagonist for like the remainder of the series. It's isn't like entirely like on the main cast's side like the whole way through, but is sort of this like um, free roaming type of character who is pretty contrast to his brother Inuyasha himself, and really showcases the differences between demons and humans in this world, and sort of the changes that characters can make throughout their lives and stuff like that. With his whole thing with Rin and everything. But yeah, he's super strong. I know he's like a fan favorite character. Um, like going sort of along with him, you have Kagura, and various incarnations of Naraku, sort of struggling for. She struggled like for freedom, for individualism, I guess, and ended up having a pretty sad story within her time frame in the series and everything. But oh, by the way, did I mention that this show has best girl of all time? Because the show has best girl of all time in Sango, the Demon Slayer. I have a whole video about that. You should check that out. It's called "She Who Slays the Demons in My Heart," because I'm an extra cool guy like that, and I title my stuff really embarrassing stuff. But please watch it; it's pretty good. Oh, and the show has the greatest villain of all time, in my opinion. I like Naraku a whole lot. Another controversial thing, I guess. Some people really don't like this guy and how long he lasts in the series. Spoiler alert, like the entire way. But I like him a lot. That's kind of one of the reasons I really find him interesting. Is that I think that he is so very manipulative and so cunning and so always a step ahead of everything that you love to hate him. And this channel is named after one of his abilities, Miasma. I get that from him, obviously, and he's just very, very, very powerful and a huge influence on the lives of pretty much every character within the main cast. Um, and yeah, he's just awesome, just awesome. Oh, and Shippo is just there, by the way. I guess I didn't really have a whole segment about Shippo. Shippo exists. But yeah, that's I love the characters of this series. It's not really like I guess there are other shows that do these sort of things, but when I watch other like longer running things, like when I watch like Naruto or like the or I don't know, like just these shows that like have like bigger casts or something like that, and I don't find myself nearly as attached to I am with the Inuyasha cast, if that makes sense. It it's kind of this just thing where like I would feel very, 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 very devastated if any of this main cast of Inuyasha were to die and so forth. Whereas in other shows, I kind of like brush it off, and that could go for like maybe my maturity as an anime fan versus like when I first became an Inuyasha fan and everything. But while I'm attached to like pretty much everybody in Full Metal Alchemist, characters might pass away, and it might be a big part of the show. but I'm not like absolutely devastated because I'm not as attached to that person as I am attached to Kagome or Moroku or Sango or Inuyasha. These people, maybe Shippo can die, but and I don't mean to shit on FMA. FMA is a fantastic show. In fact, I would say quality-wise, Brotherhood is probably the best anime ever. But it still loses out to Inuyasha for me, personally. My number one big old reason why I love this series so much is pure nostalgia. It was my first anime ever. I watched it on Adult Swim. I would assume like early 2000s. It was on pretty late at night. They would air a couple episodes back to back, and like Monday through Friday, and they would put them like in sequence. So I don't think like when I first like watched it, it was like direct episode one. I think it was kind of maybe I don't really necessarily know, but then eventually I got a hold to watching it like in order, and grew to love it even more. And it was just kind of a ritual for me. Like every night before bed, I would watch this amazing, literal feudal fairy tale with these interesting characters in this genre of animation that I hadn't really seen before. And I'm really glad that I got attached to it. I've gotten to know other Inuyasha fans through the internet and stuff like that. I know that this series does have a pretty big following. I even started. I feel bad saying I've even started because it's been a long time since I've really read any of it. But I have started picking up the manga in the last like couple years or so. I only have about 6 of these 3-in-1 volumes here, and I think I've only read like 4 of them. The art style is a little different in these. Not that it's bad, but it is kind of a little off-putting for me because I got so used to how the anime looks. Manga's still great. I recommend you check that out as well. And I will eventually buy it all and read it all because this is such an influential series for me. I don't think I would be sitting here talking to you guys right now if it wasn't for Inuyasha, and I don't think I'd be a big anime fan at all if it wasn't for this series. And I'm so grateful to have it in my life. And I know that there's series like that for you guys out there that are probably a very different show. Maybe you don't have one of those. Maybe it's a myriad of different shows. Whatever it may be, let me know down below. I really want to know what you guys' favorite shows, and maybe give me a solid reason why you think that it's so good. Or let me know about your first sort of experience with that show. Was it before bedtime at night and you were cramming in those 2 episodes before shut eye like I was? But yeah, if you like what I'm doing here, maybe consider joining that Patreon. I'll have a link to that in the description box. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. It really means a lot to me. My name is Miasma, and I'll see you next time.